welcome to another episode of ASAP Conversations during COVID. And today we have with us Shelani from Sri Lanka, and as our member of our country advocacy network from Sri Lanka. Shelani, please introduce yourself and a bit about the work that YANSL has been doing. Yeah.
Hello everyone. My name is Shelani Palihawadana. I work with Youth Advocacy Network Sri Lanka, who's also working very closely with ASAP. I work as a project coordinator and also as a junior trainer part-time with YANSL, Youth Advocacy Network Sri Lanka. And I work specifically with young people living with hearing disabilities. But other than that, we work a lot on lobbying for gender equality and making sure that young people have access to sexual and reproductive health, and like all of the education bit of it, make sure that there is awareness. And apart from, so under that umbrella, we work a lot with the government and other civil society organizations and other supranational bodies like the United Nations sub-agencies.
What are the kind of challenges that an advocacy group like YANSL and many others have sort of faced in terms of talking about SRH and abortion services in Sri Lanka, and what the scenario regarding accessing abortion before the pandemic was for like women or even trans person, or was it like as a right, or what were the limitations? So just share a bit about that as well before the pandemic.
So Sri Lanka in general is, I think, very similar to how the situation in India is also like a very conservative and a traditional culture, a mix of a lot of things. So in terms of making sure that people are open-minded about sexual and reproductive health rights, and the accurate knowledge is going in and busting a lot of myths, we have a lot of challenges in terms of that, making sure that the correct knowledge is reaching the target audience, and also to make sure that the key populations and the marginalized and vulnerable communities also get the same access. If I move on to the situation with regard to accessing safe abortion in Sri Lanka, so Sri Lanka is one of the countries with the most restrictive abortion laws in the region, where we have only one exception for abortion, where the life of the mother is at risk. That is the only exception that the law provides for. But despite the legal restrictions, women have been accessing abortion for a long time. And up until very recently, Marie Stopes clinics and other institutions were in operation, so provided safe abortion services for these women. And apart from that, while it's difficult to access, medical abortion pills and services related to that are still available. However, accessing that is difficult, so not everyone can access them as easily.
So
and because of
to make it a bit more clear, if someone needs an abortion, and say an unmarried woman needs an abortion, and she cannot obviously talk to her family about it, so what are the options that she, or even trans man for instance, needs an abortion? So what are the options they would have, since you're saying that it's restrictive? Yeah,
it's so if that person has a bit of connection on awareness, knowledge on what people, which agencies, which institutions that they can access and reach out to, they can obviously in a moderate, they can access it moderately easily. But it's a different case when it comes to a person coming from a marginalized community, especially like you said, if it's a trans man accessing an abortion, it would be really difficult. And to add to that, there are a lot of back alley unsafe clinics where unsafe abortions are operated. So most of the people who are coming from these marginalized communities, or people who don't have the necessary knowledge or awareness but are really desperate to get an abortion, the first and the most obvious choice for them would be these unsafe clinics, where the personnel who perform the procedure are not qualified even. So there's a high risk for the woman who's getting the abortion. And also, according to data, Sri Lanka has a rate of 750 to 1,000 abortions, unsafe abortions happening per day. This is 2002, so obviously since then the rates have increased, but we don't have solid data to quantify how the rates are now. And to add to that, again, when you are, especially when you are a woman who doesn't know what to do, but you are going blindly into it, and you are given a solution, the prices and making sure that you are getting post-abortion care, nothing is, there's no safeguards to make sure that if you are not aware. But with that being said, we do have post-abortion care. It is legal, and the state hospitals, even the private hospitals, are are supposed to provide for safe abortion, like not safe, sorry, post-abortion care without any question being asked. However, there's a little bit of stigma, possibly in areas other than Colombo, but it is legal and people do access them. The problem, however, is that the knowledge about these services are still not disseminated sufficiently enough for women to access.
So moving further, you're saying that the safe abortion was already pretty restricted even before the pandemic hit and before this crisis hit. So I can't even imagine how many more challenges, like even for instance, if a woman could like get out of the house saying that I'm going somewhere and get a pill or get an abortion done, but now even that door is sort of closed. So what are the kind of challenges that have really amplified because of this crisis, because of the lockdown that we were in? Yeah.
The people had at most about 2 or 3 days. Some people who are staying in Colombo had less than a day's notice for a month, almost 2 month long lockdown. So people obviously didn't have any sort of time to prepare for a lockdown. So there are the consequences that come as a result of the lockdown is more amplified in the current situation. So like you said, access to contraceptive services are really severely restricted. For example, when you have one hour's notice for a lockdown, a month-long lockdown, and at the time people didn't know how long it was going to take. Obviously, the rational thing is you don't have everything planned. You wouldn't have pills in store for years to come, right? Or condoms in store for years to come. So there's a huge problem there. But in terms that is in terms of contraceptives, but there are delivery services and such in urban areas for condoms and pills. However, the brands that are supplied are really expensive and not everyone can afford them. Specifically when it comes to young people, they can't really afford to buy expensive brands of condoms and other contraceptives.
And has there been
there's a lack.
Sort of, just sorry to cut you, but has there been sort of a government support as well in this regard to sort of say that like any sort of support in the SRH department, considering that there might be unintended pregnancies, stock might run out of contraceptives. So all of these issues, have they been also thought about? Yeah.
The government, the Ministry of Health in particular, have released a couple of guidelines, specific, not necessarily focused on SRH services, but specifically focused on maternal and child health care. But the clinics, the MOH clinics, and the related clinics are also the clinics that provide SRH services by the government. So the contraceptives are provided free of charge there, and that way people can access. But again, the knowledge among the population that these clinics are open and they can go and access contraceptives from there is not out there. Add to that, the lockdown is enforced in such a way that people cannot step out of their own houses unless it's a very dire reason. So getting access to contraceptives is obviously down in the list of priorities if you go and present yourself to a police officer and ask for a curfew pass. So there's a mismatch of requirements. However, the government have provided considerable support in that sense. But again, there's a mismatch of delivery. People don't have access to contraceptives. And to add to that, so there are other questions, specifically among young people. Now, people are being asked to exercise social distancing, and young people specifically frequently ask questions, whether like the guidelines say that you can't hug as you used to hug people before, you can't kiss and have other sort of physical relationships. A perfect example of how the pandemic has made things difficult for specifically young people from all aspects. About 2 weeks into the curfew, I got a call from a person who required abortion pills. But at the time, she didn't know whether she was pregnant. So her difficulty was first accessing a pregnancy test, and she cannot access a pregnancy test because she was at home with her parents, and she cannot tell her parents that she wants a pregnancy test for obvious reasons. Her privacy and parents are not being open-minded enough for for her to get it, and also she's an unmarried girl who's still at college. So she was depressed, stressed, and didn't know what to do. And I could see that it has affected her mentally a great deal. And she was going down, she was severely depressed when she spoke to me. So we managed to get access to a couple of pregnancy tests to make her feel like to solve the problem pleasantly. But this was one example where she actually knew who to contact. But how many young people are out there who don't know what to do?
Yeah.
So these type of problems are there at the moment. Now the situation is a little bit better because the curfew has been lifted conditionally, but accessing abortion medication in particular is still difficult, and we don't actually have any data as to how even the back alley clinics are functioning. And getting down abortion medication from online platforms like Women on Web, you can't do it because even the postal services are being restricted and it's not working anymore. So you cannot get access until it's too late. This is how things stand as of now.
We're also at a situation where the woman is like you just said, exactly same scenario, that she is in a house with a lot of toxicity and she cannot really talk about it to anyone, and she wants to get an abortion, but she cannot even get something delivered at the house because somebody will check. So we are also at a position that there is no way out, right? How do you help a person who cannot go out, who cannot get medicines delivered? So it's just really sort of like a Pandora's box that has opened in this pandemic and has really shown what our deepest issues with our society and with regards to stigma has been. So coming to that, but it has also sort of opened a bit of opportunities. Like for instance, a lot of women are across the world, due to lack of any other option, are accessing medical abortion pills over the counter. Even they might not be prescribed, but to think that even that is so much safer than other unsafe methods that are out there. So according to you, what do you think in Sri Lanka, once all of this sort of goes back to normal and things go back to the way they were? So how do you see a change? What are our learnings that have been from this pandemic? To how do we need to realign the way that we have been living, of looking at access?
I think after we come out of this crisis, the pandemic, our efforts in making sure that we make the relevant policymakers, the government, for us to convince that the knowledge about these issues and the requirement of accessing safe abortion, because it's happening anyway, whether you like it or not, whether it's illegal or not. So for us, we are currently working on making sure, lobbying with the necessary other civil society organizations, with the government, to make sure that we make it available for people who require it, to make sure that information about accessing safe abortion, medical abortion pills, even medical abortion pills, is out there. And apart from that, after this, one other thing is that making sure that young people and everyone in general have knowledge. So as long as they have knowledge, they know at least what to do, what the next step is, what a potential next step could be. So making sure that we fill those gaps is, I think, a priority once we step out of this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So following up with that, just to sort of also, we had discussed about it in the beginning a bit about the story of the narrative of the abortion history, the rights to abortion in Sri Lanka. YANSL has been working on it, and they have created a documentary or docu-series. I think Shelani will be able to better tell us about that. So yeah, just share a bit about that as well. And its relevance in the current time. Yeah.
So Youth Advocacy Network Sri Lanka, in partnership with ASAP, we have been providing about a series of 6 videos. One, a historical perspective of how abortion in Sri Lanka and use of contraceptives. So from the the late 1960s, 70s, where the use of contraceptives began, and Sri Lanka being a test ground for the use of contraceptives, from that narrative, from that point onwards, is being very methodically described by the people who are experts in the field. So um, the perspective in the late 70s, 80s is narrated by a researcher whose research is on the use of contraceptives in Sri Lanka, and also we are also talking about in another video the means and methods available, and the means and methods which used to be available, and the laws with regard to that, and the the process of amending of laws, because um, making the to make the abortion laws less restrictive was an attempt that women and other the civil society organizations have been lobbying for a long time to make sure to make it happen, but there are other pressures at work which prevent this from happening. That narrative is there. It's a very interesting narrative. A person who has been there from the first initial stages is describing the process of amendments, which amendments went through, and why it wasn't included in the law as of now. And also we have the perspective from medical professionals, and also from a religious perspective, from
Wow.
um, a more progressive religious group who give their perspective into
So
accessing safe
these,
abortion. And also,
so these videos, you have released all of them, or you're sort of in the process of putting them out? And where can
so
people view it? Yes.
so out of the 6, I think about 4 has been released into the YouTube, so if, people can access it through the YANSL YouTube channel.
Great.
They
Great.
are very brief videos, about 5 minutes each, where the resource person talks about their own perspective of into safe abortion, which is very interesting, because once you finish listening and watching to all 5 6 videos, then you have a very holistic idea of how safe abortion works in Sri Lanka, how the concept even works, laws, society, religious pressures, everything.
No, I think that's so important. I feel that most other countries as well sort of should like document it in like a way that and in a more conversational manner that you people are doing, and really listening to the stories and the struggles right from the beginning. I mean, it's just so interesting, and really looking forward to seeing all the videos, and we'll be sharing the channel link in our description as well, so you can check that out. And yeah, so coming to the last point of the conversation, so coming to you, how have you been dealing with the lockdown? And because we're in a very unusual time, it's very mentally sort of draining, because you also hear news of the kind of challenges people are facing, right, who are not as fortunate to have a job or to have a house or to be able to go back to their house. So how have you been dealing with all of that? Like, so if any tips you have to give, please do share.
So personally, for me, I think I'm honestly one of the lucky ones to be in, like, to live in this time, because uh, I don't have huge problem. It's not that I don't have, but I don't have to struggle for a lot of things like a lot of people do. But there is the feeling of guilt when you say you make something and eat, you feel, there are other people who can't even have this. But I think the situation is getting a little bit better now. But in terms of person, I think I've used this time for self-care, because I think this was the perfect time to eat healthy, work out, and pay
We
attention to
get
myself.
logged down with our thoughts and ideas. So
Yes,
let's explore that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said, I've always I also had this. So this was I just related one experience, but that has not been the only experience. There are, when people are faced with a deadlock situation where they can't get out of, and when you are asked to help out and you are also helpless, that's a pretty frustrating feeling that you get, because if not for this, you could have very easily helped them out and make the problem go away. So that's also there, and that kind of opened my eyes to a different perspective to life, in a a different sense, something that I haven't thought about or like experienced before.
Definitely, I think it has opened a lot of our eyes, and a lot of everybody's way of looking at things is sort of now changing and altering. We're checking our own privilege, our own, where we stand in the hierarchy and how fortunate are we. So that's, yeah, it's a fight that we are fighting. Thank you so much again, Shelani, for joining for the call and taking out the time. And thank you to whoever tuned in as well. Great. Hope you have a good day.